18 years later, David is already a man. After a night of passion, a 16-year-old girl becomes pregnant by one of his friends after this situation. She hesitates to nip that problem in the bud, but a series of events occurs that causes her to give her son David up for adoption. 18 years later, David is already a man who, despite being adopted, is very loved by his current parents, who give him a train ticket for David to go study in the United States. Since they do not know that a few days later, David will find himself between life and death. The problem that his parents Jimmy and Susan now suffer from is that in the adoption records, there is a clause which establishes that David, upon turning 18 years old, can establish contact with his biological parents if David wants to. Susan is not far from reality, since on the other hand Melissa, her biological mother, tells her current partner her concern about contacting David, but she is invaded by the immense doubt that her son could hate her for having given him up for adoption. But there's only one way to find out, and her partner is fully behind it. One day at school, while David is talking to his friend Nate, he is interrupted by Mr. Russell to talk to him alone and invite him to participate in a speech contest in which Russell is one of the supervisors, and giving David a chance to talk about the value of family, as the supervisor suggests that he share his experience of being an adopted youth, so he can do a good job and win a cash prize. But David hesitates because he feels that he is not good at speaking in public. And also many people do not know that he is adopted. So David asks him for some time to meditate on his response. It's a class. The next day, David has a wrestling tournament where he stands out as the best. And at the least expected moment, the worst happens as David falls unconscious to the ground. And when he wakes up, he is already in the hospital. But not everything ends there. His parents do not stop worrying, and even more so when the doctor talks with him and they give him the diagnosis, which is somewhat delicate, since it presents excessive pressure against the brain, where it pushes part of the skull and therefore forces the tissue into the spinal canal. It is a disease called Chiari malformation. It is congenital and develops as the person grows. The doctor added that the only way to eliminate the pressure is to open immediately, since his situation may worsen as the days go by. Thank you. David agrees to the intervention since he has been having frequent headaches and they are already becoming unbearable. So, his parents have no choice and they agree. David feels confused, not understanding why this has to happen to him. Seizes the moment and confesses that she was angry with God for a long time after the loss of their babies John and Michael, but if all that hadn't happened she wouldn't have had him, and she feels terrified just thinking that it would have been her life without him. But David encourages her, saying that everything will be fine. The next morning after the intervention, David is feeling very well and his headaches should have disappeared, but he feels sad because the doctor definitely forbade him from lucha libre, which is his passion. On leaving the hospital, Jimmy receives a call from the Adoption Registration Institute that David's biological mother has updated the data, has the right to contact his birth parents. That means that her son, if he wants, can contact her. What do you think? On leaving the hospital, Jimmy receives a call from the Adoption Registration Institute that David's biological mother has updated the data, has the right to contact his birth parents. That means that her son, if he wants, can contact her. What do you think? Despite this news, her adoptive parents are very concerned, and without being able to do anything about it, they give her the opportunity for David to decide to contact her. I don't know. Okay. It's a lot to think about, but David is confused and reluctant to want to see her, claiming that he does not know if he wants to see her again in his life. Although he is not sure, he authorizes his father to send the request letter. And without wanting to put pressure on him, his parents let him take his time so that he is the one to make such an important decision. Left alone with David, his father lets him know how important and loved he is, and unselfishly invites him to think about how difficult it was for Melissa to make the decision to give him up for adoption, since at just 17 years old, her couple of 16 recently graduated and pregnant did not have the support of their parents. And without work or money, They had to make that decision without knowing that it would affect them for the rest of their lives. Brian and Melissa at that time meticulously searched for those who were going to adopt their little and innocent baby. They themselves were surprised by so many people who wanted to adopt, but they wanted the parents to be as similar to them with their same tastes so that if one day they met them they would like them. They spent time reading all the letters from mothers who wanted to adopt until one day, Melissa read one that touched her heart, which said that they had lost 2 children to Aicardi syndrome at a very young age. This is how they chose the adoptive parents. David is very happy to have the family he has today, and he wouldn't change it for anything. That's why he decides to accept to participate in the speech contest with Mr. Russell. 2 days later, the competition begins where David stated that he was happy with the parents he has. And that it doesn't matter if he is adopted or not, but he thanks God for having a home where they love him. David did not imagine that he could win how it actually happened. Only, he won second place, awarding her a check for $250,000. While her friend, Naughty, congratulates him on the award, David receives a message from Melissa saying that she apologizes for her, but that she is willing to answer any question she wants to ask. Then Melissa also contacts Brian to inform him of her decision to meet David. For that reason, Brian has no choice but to tell his current partner that he had a son when he was in high school. She understands and is willing to support him. On the other hand, David accepts that his friend Nate make a documentary about his life as an adopted son. While his parents remembered that wonderful moment when they gave him the news that they were looking for their adopted son, how excited they were to be parents after waiting so long from then on, they dedicated themselves to David, giving him all their attention and unconditional love for all these 18 years. Everyone is emotionally involved, and they have mixed feelings since Melissa contacted David and she wants to meet him. Brian is not far behind and also wants to meet him. So David is very confused, not knowing what to do. His parents advised him, but the decision is solely his. The days go by and still David does not decide to take the step, since he had never imagined that this would happen in his life. Wow! Until one day he receives a message from Melissa, in which she lets him know that he has a 12-year-old sister named Courtney. Oh wow! There David gets so excited, and finally makes that hard decision, and Melissa cannot contain so much joy since they have been dreaming and waiting for that great day for 18 years. David, before traveling, takes advantage of the fact that they are all gathered at the table, while Nate is recording to tell everyone that he loves them deeply and always will be, but that he needs to fill that missing piece of the puzzle, and admits that, yes, he wants to meet her parents and that she always wonders what her life would have been like without Jimmy and Susan. He will always be grateful to Melissa for the choice she made. His parents and grandparents are truly moved by these beautiful words and further reaffirm the love they feel for David. After a long trip, they arrive at Melissa's house. The long-awaited day has arrived. And when they see each other face to face, they give each other a huge hug in between "I love you" and "how good to see you." Endless emotions explode between them. And it is true that there cannot be a greater feeling than what they experienced at that moment. But that emotion still does not end, since they introduced him to his little sister, and what couldn't be missing was that David wanted Melissa to tell her story from beginning to end. And while she was telling it, she felt her soul tear again, when she made the decision to give him up for adoption. She confessed how hard it was for her to think in all those beautiful moments when living with her son. He, on the other hand, thanked her immensely for having given her parents that she gave them, since it is because of them that she is who she is today. At that moment, her father Brian in a message asks her to let him know when they have some time available, because he also wants to meet David. Happily, everyone had a very fun day like a real family when Melissa asked David if she wanted to go skydiving with her. Without thinking twice, she accepted. Yes, let's do it. So they all went off to experience the sensation of flying through the sky, and although Nate flatly refused to participate, they managed to launch it. Between screams of fear and terrified, he quickly went down, and when he arrived, he was grateful to be on the ground again. The next day, David meets Brian, and he tells him how hard it was to make the decision to adopt him since his mother was adopted, and he hated his parents for it, and he thought the same thing would happen with David, but the other option they considered was worse. Listening to him, he also thanks him for getting the parents he has now. David has not only one sister, but two 5-year-old Presley, Brian's daughter. Then David went to an address that Melissa had given him to meet. And there he began to tell her the saddest story of his life when he found out about his pregnancy and arrived at a pregnancy termination clinic. And he told step by step what his path was terrible. From the door, where there were many people against this practice, who yelled at him not to do it. That it was a crime, to how cold and pathetic the intervention room was. It tells how anguished she felt in that place. And when everything was ready and she was about to perform the intervention, a voice told her, "Get up, you still have time." That's when Melissa told the doctor to stop and left the room quickly. And so she saved the life of her baby. David hugs her, saying that she let him live and she has nothing to regret and everyone supports her. Now, God has privileged David having two beautiful families, where love and understanding reign. Everything that David has been through serves as an example for Nate's sister, who is currently in the same dilemma as Melissa in 19 years ago, to have a correct solution to her pregnancy. As David expresses how happy he is with the life he has, and he thanks his mother for the decision she made. Never forget that the decision is made before you get pregnant, not after. Subscribe, share and like.